Hi, my name's Peggy Kroll-Roberts, and welcome to my studio. Now today there are many elements to painting a successful image, but to me one of the most important is value. So today's exercise will be learning about value. Another word is tone. So if you hear me say the word value or tone, you'll know I'm referring to a gray scale of white to black, and every color has a relationship to tone. Value actually means the lightness or the darkness of a color. So what I've done here also is I have pre-mixed my palette with 8 tones. We're only going to choose from a few, just like this exercise. But here I've made a grayscale, which generally artists and photographers will work from white to black. It's good to practice this and try and get it so there are no real big jumps between the tone swatches. So anyway, with this exercise, this is a great tool for planning the tonal plan of your painting. It's very important. You walk into a museum, and boy, I was in the Boston Museum and saw a John Singer Sargent painting from across the room. It grabbed me immediately, and I said to myself, my God, that's like a 2-value painting. And yet to get up close, you appreciate the proportion, but you get up close and all the halftones start to appear. But you want to plan with a very simple value plan. And today we are going to paint this from the model. I've got my daughter, Alexandra Roberts. She's modeling for us. I purposely put her in a pure white dress. I wanted a simple value plan. And our assignment today for this exercise is to choose 3 of these values that will best represent what's up in front of me for this particular. You have to assess every image, every subject matter on its own. And with this, I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to just, the 3 I'm going to allow myself, and when I look up there I go, well, we definitely need pure white. That's going to help represent her dress in light. And then everything else we go, well, what's in light, what's in shadow? And I think what would be good for what's in shadow is this middle tone here. You have to think of, if you only give yourself 3 values, you have to find the lowest common denominator for your big masses. Now, if I use this for shadow, and then I have to decide whether I'm going to use 2 for light, 1 for shadow, or 2 for shadow and 1 for light. And I think what I'll do is I will use 2 for shadow in this case, so she will stand out from the background. So I'm going to choose this 2. Everything else for this composition will have to be, so I have 2 for shadow, 1 for light, and let's get started, because we could maybe get a couple of these done and I can show you some examples. So I've got a smaller, I'm going to sketch with my smaller flat, which from lots of use they turn into filberts, so they're good for sketching. I'm going to place Allie in a, this has a vertical feeling, so let's see if we can get this. This is the planning stage I would normally do, possibly in a sketchbook, or work it out here to find my favorite dark light pattern. So I'm going to place her head here. Her head, I think very, when I look at the figure, I think of its I reduce it, try to its most rudimentary geometric forms. It helps me I may crop it there to connect her to the side of the canvas. Find the center gesture line. Let's see, hand. So you can see I'm not too detailed right now. I just want to go for the big masses. And once again, this is just a value planning exercise. Now I want to make sure those hips, the figure is believable. She blocks the light, so is casting a shadow. Cast a shadow here. There's a screen. I'll move that behind her a little. I can see the knee under the fabric, and that starts right here. The other knee's a little lower. That's right under here, so you want to make sure any tension folds radiate from the point where it feels the most tension to where it's being pulled. Those folds really help you feel the figure under the fabric. Now with this quick sketch, I'm just going to start looking for the big masses. And I usually start with my shadows, what's in shadow first. So I've chosen this for the cast shadow. On the red. It's going to work well for the cast shadow on the flesh. Her head blocks the light, casts a shadow there. This forearm blocks the light and casts a shadow there. Her head, egg shape, turned down. Forearm facing away from the light, so you get a form shadow here. Little bit of a cast shadow there. I usually paint beyond the edges because I know I can carve in back and forth and recreate some contours. I use my brush as all the time to measure for proportion and angles. Okay, and this entire, with the exception of that leg there, that is all in shadow. Her foot goes in shadow there. So just keep in mind, I am massing big areas of shadow. Always keep your mind on the assignment. I like assignments. I'll usually start paintings with assignments because it keeps me focused. There's so many subheads under the fundamentals, and it's just nice to have knowing what you want to say and planning it. Now that works well for the shadows on the background, the flesh. I've got one more I've chosen to represent shadow, and I will let that represent her dress in shadow, because that's a little lighter and that will get the most information. Just saw a mark where I can fold her hips. That hand blocks the light. I see a couple areas where I missed, but I can go back and get that. I'm not worrying about all these little folds. I can find some of those later. And for this assignment, you just want to ignore those for now. If you get too many in, you'll get lost. It'll get confused. I save those to really fine design. Now her dress, she's got her block, the little sleeve there is in shadow. This sleeve up here is in shadow. Now I need to go back and, originally I missed the side of this arm. And I missed the side of the forearm that goes into shadow. That's okay. I know I've got the value I've assigned to it. Now with those two values, everything else, this makes this easy, and everything else goes into light. And I've left myself, the assignment was just one for the light, so that's all I've got. Just work with it. And so what's illuminated by my source light? And this is where I can carve back and forth. I can connect lights to light and finesse. This is illuminated. This is illuminated. I think I'll get a slightly bigger brush to cover some of these masses. What else is being illuminated by my main source light? This entire background. I see the flowers, I see the wood trim, I see all the subtle value changes. But right now we're creating a value plan for this particular setup. Let's keep that clean. Allie, you're doing great, honey. Thank you. Okay, this is, you know, the whole, what this is good for, what this process is good for is you get your proportion of dark to light. I have a proportion. It's just a rule of thumb, but for anything, it's that 1/3, 2/3. If I'm going to light the figure, I'm going to try not to light it half and half. I'm going to try and light it with 1/3, 2/3, or 1/4, 3/4. Same with values. I would like my painting to feel either predominantly dark or predominantly light. Avoiding the half and half. It just looks static. And then this arm is in light, and that connects to the top of that leg. This skirt changes, goes from a horizontal plane to just a little bit of the vertical gets in light. The leg underneath there. Be a designer with these shapes. There's nothing to say that I don't go up there and completely rearrange the folds. But with the time, I can take liberties. A lot of times when I'm teaching workshops and we're outdoors painting the figure from life in beautiful sunlight, there may be some disturbing background. And I encourage the class. I tell them, you know, there's nothing to say I didn't hire some guy to come in last night and tear down that wall or move that big dumpster, or you can and then find notes of truth within the area of the model. So be a designer with these folds. I used to be a fashion illustrator, and as I've looked at, I mean, I just read art history books all the time and look at books. You know, for example, John Singer Sargent, Frank Benson. You've seen a particular photo Frank Benson worked from. You can just see what a designer these guys were. You know, John Singer Sargent, he was a fashion illustrator at heart. You could see a little bit of a sameness to the way he would treat the arch of a neck, forearms on all those socialites he painted. Allie's a socialite. Well, oh, that just... Okay, let's finish this up here. Going to minimize that, get that closer, cover some of these areas. Some of these lines you can go ahead, if it bothers you that you lose some edges, you know, that's okay. You can leave some of the drawing if you need to, if it makes you nervous. Otherwise, you're going to lose some of this information. But once again, remember, this is a planning stage. These are things you need to work out. Boy, who was it? Howard Pyle, N.C. Wyeth. Man, were they planners of a painting. They just didn't go with the first. Some of these little darks, some of these little accents. Now, right now, I'm looking at this painting and saying, okay, it is predominantly light in value. So I think it could work as far as a dark light pattern, but I also like to become conscious of where can I tie darks together, how can I simplify areas. Maybe I would treat the flesh as, maybe I'd go back and treat the flesh, tie that in to the with the value I've used for the white in shadow. I think that simplifies it. It turns it into a simpler read. You can already see and I think simplifying shapes, making shapes, making it as readable as possible. Be a designer, make a painting. I live for this. This is my subject matter. This is all my reference point. I do try to stay pretty close to it, but I live for this. I make sure that this gets a life of its own. You know, essentially, if you just want to be a slave to what's up in front of you, you have to make sure it's perfect. And that's pretty hard to do, especially if you just want to get painting like I do. So I've taken some liberties with the fold. I've just eliminated some what I personally feel is some unnecessary information. I can go back and find some later. Let's see, for example, here's a little bit of light showing on her hip. One thing I want to do, I'll show you another tool with this, is this can be your best friend, a mirror. Now, I use my mirror all the time, and you can look at your artwork backwards, and right away you can see if drawing, proportions, color, a lot of things will change. What a mirror does is it gives you a fresh look at your painting. It's kind of like putting the painting up for a couple days, and you come back out into the studio and things jump out that you didn't see after working on it. Well, that's what a mirror does immediately. So it's just a really helpful tool. My husband will say, if he sees me using my mirror, he'll go, "Oh, you look great, sweetheart." Silly. So anyway, let's go back. Let's try one more. We've got a couple minutes left. And Allie, how would you like to shift your pose one more time?
Okay.
And just sit. Maybe you can just sit and turn the other way so your back is facing the light.
This way?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just sit up straight and just something like that, but sit forward on the couch. Just like that's great. That looks lovely. Now let's see if we can't, I would still use the same arrangement. If, for example, I moved the screen behind her or created a background shadow, that could also work. But let's just reinforce this one more time. I'm going to shift this over this way a little. And I think what I'll do is we'll crop this. You need to practice this. So practice getting a set of values. I did white to black in 8 steps. Generally, it's white to black in 10 steps. You've got that, but just for the sake of these exercises, I limited it. So head, for me, it's an egg shape depending on the angle. Could look like a cube if she's got a nice brush as a great measuring tool for angles, alignment, proportions. Those hands fall right down under here from my view. Okay, and well, we've got our friend up there who's being so good. That's Wendy. Wendy came to us. We found her. She was hiding out in our garage. We just think, and she was so scared at first, and now she's our studio cat. Okay, what's in shadow? What's in light? Again, I like how I figured this out the first time rather than using this for always thinking of balance. Now we may go back to using this tone for remember, you have to make an assignment out of this. Don't succumb to wanting to put more values in than what you gave yourself to begin with. It's great to practice 2-value paintings too. You know, this, when I was in art school, this instructor we had, he would just try and pound this into. It's not an easy concept to understand, to look at these. And it took me a long time. But once you understand the power of it, you really start to understand those big paintings you see in the museums. Okay, we've got light and shadow. Let me finish the shadow of her. Now this is another situation where I could imagine a wall right there casting a shadow. So let's create a different look, and let's just silhouette her with this dark. And see what happens with our dark light pattern just by changing the background. Okay, we are almost done with this, and I just want you to remember that values create your design, values create your dark light pattern, which is really what's going to draw you from a distance. Tie these lights together. This is in light, illuminated. You can make this easy. I've got a couple, if you're just a very beginner, you really want to paint from some simple blocks, cylinders. You can get those at any hobby store and paint them. I'll get some out next time and show you. But now we've gotten a different feeling with this just by changing the background on this. So essentially, and we've said more of a lighter, she's in a white dress, the background's lit, no real darks up there. It'd be a different story if she was in a black dress. So always just assess at what's up in front of you. Don't force any formulas on it. And remember, values are one of the most important fundamentals to grasp, and practice your value scale. And thank you so much for joining me in the studio. And to learn a little bit more about me, go to our website, krollroberts.com. Thanks.